Hi, Adela here from notaclass.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to discuss how to use these data trackers for students, how I have used them in my classroom. And this resource is pretty large. It has more than 40 pages in there, and honestly, you're not going to use all of them. The point is for you to pick and choose which trackers you or your school or your grade level team wants to use. You are going to be able to edit every single page in here and just adjust them based off of your needs, your student needs, your school and district wants and needs, and just make it your own. Also, don't forget to watch the student version of this video, because in that version, I show students how they can organize their data folders or their data binders. This is just an example of how students would keep track. They would use a coloring pencil and they would just like shade in their score on the bar graphs. That's one version. The other version has students their fall score, winter score, and spring score. And this could be used maybe for if you're taking the NWEA MAP assessment or whatever district or state assessments your students have to take. Usually, they'll have a fall, winter, or spring score, and there are some parts on where they can reflect what they're proud of, what their strengths are, and what their goals are for the next assessment. This is when you schedule a conference with your student. It depends on when you can meet with them, but they would keep track of what you discuss in the conferences. So they would write their date, what you discussed, what their strengths are, and what their goals and next steps are. And all of this can be left in their data folders or in their data binders. So these data trackers, you can have students place them in a folder. So you can 3-hole punch them, have them in this folder, label it with their name. And this could be, if you're only teaching math, then the students can travel with these folders, and they can also keep their reading data in there, their science data, or it could be just a math data folder and you could keep it in your classroom. It's really up to you. You might also consider having sheet protectors. So they would, instead of 3-hole punching the trackers themselves, you would have the students place them inside their sheet protectors, and they take them out and then they shade in their bar graph or write their score or reflect, and then place them back in the sheet protectors. This way it might be less messy. I don't know. Get a feel of your students, of your classroom, and see what will work best for you. Now, if your students have a binder and they're traveling class to class with their binder, you might want to consider having the dividers in there for them and just have like a math data tracker, or like maybe it has just all of their data. You could discuss this with your teammates and see what would work best for you. I've had it in different ways. One year we had students with binders, another year they had their individual folders. It really just depends on what all of you agree on. Now let's move on to see how the student data trackers look when you download them and how you can edit them. So this digital product has little over 40 pages, and what you want to do is pick and choose which data trackers you want for your students. It really depends on which assessments you are taking, which assessments your school and district wants you to keep track of. In this example, I have a bar graph where this might be something you might use for iStation. you can obviously edit the bar graph. So let me go down to this another example. So here is the data tracker. And at the top, you can type in whatever assessment this is, and then you can print it out and make copies for your students, and they will use coloring pencils to shade in their bar graphs. You can also edit the scores here towards the left, and at the bottom I wrote August through May, but you can obviously edit that as well. And you can choose to, when you right click, you can choose to delete some rows or insert some rows and columns. It is really up to you and what you need. So when we go further down, we have more of the similar products based off of the iStation data trackers. And this one is more for your unit assessments or other tests that you're taking in the classroom where you want your students to record their percentages. And below, over here, we have the assessments that you take 3 times a year. So students can record their fall score, winter score, and spring score. And I have math, reading, and science all on one page. But you can definitely choose this one where it's both math and you cut it in half, and that way you're saving on paper as well. This one has some reflection parts over here, and you can change the wording based off of what your students need and how you like it to sound. Here's another example. My fall score was, my goal score for winter is, I will achieve this goal by, and then they kind of write the same thing about winter and spring. The top is math, the bottom is reading, and you can print it as is and have, if you teach both math and reading, that's great. They can record it on here. If you only teach math and another teacher teaches reading, then you can place it inside a folder, and this could be a sheet that travels with them from the classrooms. And this is a more in-depth reflection for math, and then we have the same thing for reading and science. And more of the same. This would be something you could use for iReady data if you take the assessment 3 times a year, or it could be for the NWEA MAP assessments, which most schools take 3 times a year. And over here, we have our math conference sheets. This one is very similar to the ones that teachers have. So when you have a conference with your students, they would write down the date, their strengths, and their goals or next steps. And you would write a similar thing on your conference sheet as well. Then we have that for reading and science. Over here is fall, winter, spring, but I wrote it from 0 to 100 because you might want to keep track or have them keep track of their percentiles. And let's see. Down. And over here, this might be something you might use for iReady data, or it might be something you want to use for the MAP assessments. And again, you can change these scores over here based off of the lowest score that your students had and the highest score. You can edit it that way. And students have a reflection part here at the bottom. That's about it. And then the last page is where we have my other products. I also have the data trackers for teachers, And then I have the life cycle of a mango and life cycle of a avocado, which isn't showing up right now. Hold on, let me see if I can refresh this. And yeah, there it is. So this last page is where you can check out my other products. You might really like the data trackers for teachers, or you might like some of the life cycles I have on here. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that this resource was helpful to you. Don't forget to watch the student version of this video because I show students how to set up their data tracker folders, how to kind of like a refresher on how they would shade in their bar graphs based off of the scores that you give them or based off of the scores that they see on their computer. It depends on how you want them to view the scores. But it's a nice little overview on how they can keep their data folders or their data binders organized. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again.